The servant should stay home and tend to the household. Chuckle. An invitation arrived for a gala at the Beaumont Emporium. It was addressed personally to me, in my name, but my husband's family snatched it away, leaving me home. Click. I heard the door lock from the outside. They had locked me in. On the kitchen table lay a note from my husband. I've taken the money from your emergency fund, so don't bother looking. Lock me in and steal my money. I decided I wouldn't tolerate it anymore. I retrieved the phone, hidden deep in the closet, and made one call. Mr. Hayes, we have uninvited guests at my department store. Soon after, true chaos would erupt at the department store. What happened? Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. And I wish immense happiness upon your home. It was 4 a.m. The whole world slept, but in the cramped pantry, a light still glowed. 35-year-old Audrey sat hunched over an old sewing machine. In her hands was her mother-in-law's tweed jacket, a piece from the world-renowned luxury brand Lumiere. Dark circles had settled under Audrey's eyes. She hadn't slept all night. After she had single-handedly canned hundreds of jars of pickles and jams for the winter, her back felt as if it would break at any moment. But her mother-in-law, having tossed her the jacket for mending, had long since fallen asleep and was snoring. Audrey, rubbing her tired eyes, carefully examined the worn part of the jacket. As her fingers touched the fabric, her gaze subtly flickered. This characteristic texture, this intricate weave. Audrey knew it better than anyone. After all, she was the one who had once chosen this fabric. 10 years ago, Audrey was a legendary designer who had shaken the European fashion world. People called her Madame A. At 25, she founded the Lumiere brand, and her first collection became a work of art, accessible only to 0.1% of the world's wealthiest people. Milan, New York. Her name echoed on the runways of all the fashion capitals, and now, this very jacket from her first collection, carelessly thrown by her mother-in-law, lay before her. Audrey smiled bitterly. The corners of her lips twitched and fell helplessly. Her heart ached at the sight of the neglected state of the creation into which she had poured her entire soul. The price of this single jacket was comparable to the cost of a good luxury sedan. Audrey had given it to her mother-in-law before her wedding, but the woman, unaware of its true value, saw in it only a tool for boasting to others. But Audrey shook her head and picked up the needle again. For now, she was neither Madame A nor the sole heiress to the Beaumont Emporium, one of America's most prestigious department stores. She was merely a daughter-in-law who for 8 years had been used as a servant in this house. At 6 a.m., having finished the repairs, Audrey headed to the kitchen. Her father-in-law asked for a full English breakfast, her mother-in-law a healthy smoothie bowl, her husband an omelet, and her sister-in-law a platter of exotic fruits. She had to prepare 4 different breakfasts to satisfy everyone. Audrey's shoulders slumped, but she silently stood at the cutting board. At 7:30, the family began to gather at the table. Her mother-in-law, Brenda, picked up the mended jacket and examined it. She raised an eyebrow and clucked her tongue. "Well, look at how well you sew." Simply astonishing. It could have sounded like a compliment, but Audrey knew it wasn't. And indeed, the continuation immediately followed. Just like a factory seamstress. "It's your destiny to serve." Audrey's hand froze. The tips of her fingers, gripping the ladle, turned white, but she said nothing. In 8 years, she had heard it countless times and was tired of being offended. Her mother-in-law, trying on the jacket, twirled in front of the mirror. A satisfied expression spread across her face, and yet this truly is a genuine Lumiere, isn't it? They say only 0.1% of people worldwide wear such things. My taste hasn't failed me. Audrey, head bowed, placed the plates on the table. A bitter chuckle echoed within her. The only person at this table who knew the true value of this jacket was herself, and the only one who created it, too. Her husband, Ethan Miller, whimsically said, "Darling, have you pressed my suit for today? I have an important meeting." "Yes, of course," Audrey replied mechanically. Her answer was devoid of emotion. It was simply habit. Ethan didn't even glance at the dark circles under his wife's eyes. He didn't look at her at all. Audrey suddenly remembered their wedding day 8 years ago. Then Ethan had promised to make her happy for life. But that promise had vanished like smoke. Their honeymoon hadn't even ended. Audrey's silhouette, washing dishes after breakfast, was filled with despondency. Slumped shoulders, cracked hands, a pale face. Not a trace remained of the radiant girl she had been on her wedding day. While washing dishes, Audrey looked out the window. The morning sun filled the kitchen with light, but its warmth seemed not to reach her heart. Suddenly, Audrey's eyes welled up with tears, but she quickly wiped them away with the back of her hand. Crying was not an option. Tears wouldn't change anything. Audrey looked at her rough hands. Once, these hands created sketches, but now they were worn out from washing dishes and doing laundry. Audrey took a deep breath. Somewhere, deep inside, a feeling slowly began to simmer. But she didn't yet know what it was. She only thought that today, tomorrow, and the day after would be the same as always. But that very day, after lunch, a postal delivery arrived that was destined to overturn her life. A luxurious envelope with gold embossing. On it was clearly written, "The Beaumont Emporium." Audrey felt her heart beat faster. A premonition of immense change enveloped her. But before that premonition became reality, a little more time had to pass. That day, the doorbell rang. Audrey, in her apron, opened the door. The courier handed her the luxurious envelope. The golden border immediately indicated that it was no ordinary letter. Audrey took the envelope and looked at the sender. The Beaumont Emporium. At the sight of these words, her heart skipped a beat, her fingertips trembled slightly. It was a letter from a world from which she had meticulously isolated herself for the past 8 years. Turning the envelope over, she saw the recipient's name, Audrey Beaumont. It was her name. With trembling hands, Audrey opened the envelope. Inside lay a magnificent invitation card. The Jubilee evening in honor of the 50th anniversary of the Beaumont Emporium and the presentation of a new VIP brand. The golden letters shone dazzlingly. Audrey's eyes moistened. This was undoubtedly from her father. He hadn't contacted her for 8 years, but it turned out he hadn't forgotten his daughter. Audrey clutched the invitation tightly to her chest. Her nose tingled, and tears welled up in her eyes. And at that very moment, a noisy thud came from the living room. Her sister-in-law, Tiffany, burst into the hallway. "What is it? What arrived?" she cried, snatching the invitation from Audrey's hands. Audrey didn't even have time to say anything. Tiffany's eyes skimmed the text and widened in astonishment in an instant. Mom, come here." Her mother-in-law, Brenda, rushed in at Tiffany's cry. Her husband, Ethan, and father-in-law, Richard, followed her into the living room. The whole family clustered around a single invitation card. "What is it?" Her mother-in-law snatched the invitation. Reading the golden letters, her eyes grew even wider. Her mouth opened, and she gasped. "My God, this is an invitation to a VIP gala at the Beaumont Emporium." Her voice jumped an octave. Her face lit up with greedy joy. Tiffany, her sister-in-law, also jumped with delight. "Mom, not everyone gets in there, only moguls and celebrities. To think such a thing came to us." Audrey spoke carefully. Her voice trembled softly. I think this invitation is in my name." Silence fell in the living room. Her mother-in-law and sister-in-law simultaneously stared at Audrey. Their gazes held bewilderment and mockery. Her husband, Ethan, snorted. "Are you out of your mind? It's a postal error. The invitation is for Mom. Who cares what it says there? You need to use your head." Audrey's face turned to stone. She pressed her lips together tightly but uttered not a word. Offense rose in her throat, but she had to remain silent. In 8 years, she had learned through bitter experience that her words had no power in this house. Her mother-in-law, tucking the invitation into her handbag, declared, "Of course, it's in my name. I've been going to their exclusive members' lounge often lately. That's how I became a VIP client." "Didn't you know?" Audrey sighed inwardly. A few visits to a members' lounge couldn't make her a VIP client of the Beaumont Emporium. To receive an invitation to such a party, one would have to spend millions of dollars a year, but Audrey remained silent. If she said that, she would only receive a reprimand. Her sister-in-law, Tiffany, had already pulled out her phone. Her fingers quickly darted across the screen. "Mom, We need to buy an evening gown. If we show up there in just anything, they'll laugh at us. Exactly. I also need a new dress, and a haircut, and a manicure. Her mother-in-law and sister-in-law, already excited, chattered away. Audrey watched them indifferently. A hollowness formed in her chest. Her husband, Ethan, sprawling on the couch, said, "I'm going too. You can make useful connections there. It will be good for my business." Her father-in-law nodded. "Yes, let's all go together. When will such a chance come again?" Audrey quietly retreated to the kitchen. Behind her, she could still hear the excited voices of her relatives, talking about dresses, designer bags, about what they would say if they met a celebrity. An endless feast of vanity. Audrey, leaning against the sink, looked out the window. Her eyes stung. It was an invitation from her father. After 8 years, he had extended a hand to her, but even that had been taken away. Audrey's hands trembled. Anger or resentment, she couldn't tell what feeling gripped her. She bit her lip until it bled. From the living room came her mother-in-law's voice. "Audrey, on the day of the party, iron all our clothes, and while we're out, clean the house thoroughly." Audrey didn't answer. She just looked out the window and cried softly. Tears dripped onto the sink, but in those tears, something was slowly changing. In Audrey's eyes, full of resignation, a tiny spark ignited. Still weak, but it was definitely a different light. Audrey, with tear-filled eyes, looked at the sky, remembering her father's face. What should she do now? Something in Audrey's chest, dormant for 8 years, began to awaken. The morning of the party arrived. Audrey woke up at 5 a.m. to iron clothes for the family. Her mother-in-law's dress, her sister-in-law's dress, her husband's suit, her father-in-law's suit. As she ironed 4 sets of clothes to perfection, she felt her arm go numb. The hot steam from the iron blew onto her face, but Audrey silently continued to work. At 8 a.m., the family began to gather in the living room. Everyone was in high spirits. Her mother-in-law, adjusting her hairstyle, done yesterday at the salon, twirled in front of the mirror. Her sister-in-law tried on a new designer bag and took selfies. This bag had been bought with money from a credit card linked to Audrey's family trust, part of her assets when she married. But no one remembered that. Audrey spoke carefully. Her heart pounded. "Can I come with you?" The air in the living room instantly turned cold. Her mother-in-law slowly turned her head. Her gaze was as if she were looking at an insect. "What did you say?" Her sister-in-law snorted. Mockery was audible in her laugh. "Sister-in-law, do you even know what kind of place that is? Moguls and stars go there. What would you wear?" Audrey's face flushed. Shame enveloped her, but she swallowed and tried again. "But the invitation is in my name." Before she could finish, her husband, Ethan, shouted, "You're at it again! If you drag yourself along with us, looking like a country bumpkin, you'll disgrace me. I need to meet important people there, and you'll ruin everything for me." Audrey's lips trembled, her eyes filled with tears, but she clenched her teeth and held back. She didn't want to cry in front of these people. Her mother-in-law, crossing her arms over her chest, gave Audrey a disdainful look. "You have things to do at home today. Put the slow-cooked pot roast on. It needs to simmer for 12 hours, and the balcony hasn't been cleaned in ages, so clean everything today." Audrey lowered her head. She had nothing more to say, and there was no point in words. At 11 a.m., the family was ready to leave. Her mother-in-law and sister-in-law, in bright dresses, liberally perfumed themselves. The sweet scent filled the living room and stung Audrey's nose. Her husband, Ethan, putting on his shoes in the hallway, turned to Audrey. His gaze was icy. "Sit quietly at home and don't get any ideas." The family rushed out the door, but something was strange. After the door slammed shut, there was a click. Audrey couldn't believe her ears. With a heavy premonition, she approached the door, wiggled the handle. The door wouldn't budge. Audrey's face went white. She pushed, pulled, rattled, the handle useless. They had locked her in from the outside. Audrey collapsed to the floor. Her strength left her. She couldn't have imagined that her own family would lock her in like an animal, not a human. Tears streamed from her eyes. After crying her fill, Audrey, swaying, stood up. Returning to the living room, she sat on the couch. And then she saw a piece of paper on the table. her husband's handwriting. With a trembling hand, Audrey took the note. It read, "If you show up at the party in your pathetic state, you'll ruin my business. Sit quietly at home, and I took the money from your drawer, so don't look for it." Audrey's hands shook. Money from the drawer. These were her savings, which she had secretly accumulated for 8 years. Saving on everything. She put away coin by coin, collected change from purchases, hid part of the money her mother-in-law sometimes gave her. This was her hope, in case she had to leave this house. Audrey rushed to the bedroom, opened the drawer. Empty. $30,000. All her savings from 8 years were gone. Audrey fell to her knees. She was shaking all over. Anger, betrayal, despair. A storm of emotions overwhelmed her. Her husband, the man with whom she had lived for 8 years, had stolen her emergency fund. Audrey covered her face with her hands and sobbed. When her tears dried, her gaze changed. A cold glint replaced the sadness. Her jaw clenched. She realized that things could not go on like this. 8 years. 8 years she had endured, survived, held on. But now it was over. She would no longer allow these people to trample her. Audrey slowly stood up. She reached deep into the closet. Between the winter blankets, a small box was hidden. It contained her secret. Opening the box, she took out a cell phone. A phone that no one in her husband's family knew about. She turned it on. The screen lit up brightly. There were many missed calls on it, all from one number, a number she had ignored for 8 years. With a trembling finger, she dialed the number. After 2 rings, someone answered on the other end. "Mr. Hayes, it's me." Audrey's voice no longer trembled. It was calm and firm. "Get the car ready. I'm leaving now." Hanging up, Audrey looked out the window. Her gaze had completely changed. The submissive daughter-in-law, Audrey Miller, was gone. In her place stood a completely different person, the heiress to the Beaumont Emporium, the legendary designer, Madame A. She had finally awakened. Exactly 20 minutes after the call, Audrey sat on the couch, looking out the window. Her soul was surprisingly calm. Like the sea after a storm, all emotions had settled. Suddenly, footsteps were heard outside the door. Muttering, then the sound of a key in the lock. Audrey stood up and looked towards the door. Click. The lock opened. The door slowly swung open. Men in black suits stood in the doorway. All of them bowed low. "Madam, forgive us for the long wait," politely said the middle-aged man standing in front. It was Mr. Hayes, her father's chief assistant, the owner of the Beaumont Emporium. Tears welled in his eyes. The sight of the madam, whom he hadn't seen in 8 years, was too pathetic. Audrey calmly nodded. "You did well, Mr. Hayes." "Not at all, madam. It's an honor to see you again, Mr." Hayes's voice trembled slightly. Audrey felt a warmth spread through her soul from his sincere joy. At least this man didn't treat her like a servant. Audrey removed her old slippers and left the apartment. In the hallway, bodyguards in black suits stood. They all, as one, bowed to her, as if greeting an honored guest. In the underground parking lot, a black executive sedan awaited her. The license plate indicated that it was a car from the Beaumont Emporium's fleet. A bodyguard quickly ran up and opened the back door. Audrey got into this car for the first time in 8 years. As the car started, Mr. Hayes spoke cautiously. "Mr. Beaumont has been eagerly awaiting you. He sent invitations every year, but you never responded." Audrey, looking out the window, replied, "I know. I was foolish." "Not at all. Mr. Beaumont respected your choice, but he always worried about you." Audrey's eyes filled with tears. Her father, 8 years ago, when she declared that she would drop everything and marry a simple man, her father was categorically against it. The daughter of a magnate, a legendary designer, and suddenly marrying a man with no money to his name. But Audrey was blinded by love. In the end, she had a big fight with her father and left home. And now 8 years had passed. The car pulled up to the Beaumont Emporium 20 minutes later, but Audrey did not exit at the main entrance for ordinary customers, but at the special VIP entrance at the rear. Department store staff were already lined up there. "Welcome, madam," they greeted in unison. Audrey walked past them and entered the elevator. The private elevator silently ascended to the very top floor, inaccessible to ordinary visitors. When the doors opened, a luxurious space appeared before her. It was a personal VIP fitting room. Soft light bathed everything around, and an exquisite aroma filled the air. One wall was occupied by a huge mirror, in front of which stood a dressing table. "Please come in, madam," the employee courteously invited. Audrey sat before the mirror. She saw her reflection: dull skin, cracked lips, lifeless eyes. 8 years of hard life had etched themselves onto her face. Audrey stared at herself for a moment, then quietly said, "Begin." After these words, the fitting room came alive. A makeup artist rushed over. A hairdresser prepared her tools. A manicurist took Audrey's hands. Seeing her rough, cracked hands, the manicurist wiped away a tear, but silently began to meticulously tidy her nails. An hour passed. Audrey's face gradually changed. Dull skin glowed. Cracked lips became moisturized and glossy. The hairdresser carefully styled her hair. Lifeless strands glistened. 2 hours passed. A completely different woman was in the mirror. Her eye makeup was understated but deep. Her lips were colored an elegant wine-red shade. Her high-pinned hair gave her an aristocratic look. Not a trace of the exhausted daughter-in-law remained. "The dress is ready," said the employee. Audrey turned her head. In the girl's hands was a dress in a black garment bag. Audrey stood up and slowly approached. When the bag was removed, a breathtaking dress appeared before her eyes. A midnight blue silk gown. The shoulders elegantly draped, the waist was clearly defined. The hem was studded with thousands of tiny crystals that shimmered like stars in the night sky with every movement. Audrey's eyes moistened. She knew this dress. It was her creation, made 10 years ago, when she was Madame A, the only one of its kind in the world. At that time, a famous actress offered an astronomical sum for it, but Audrey never sold it. She kept it for a special day, to wear herself. "Mr. Beaumont saved it for you," Mr. Hayes said quietly. Audrey silently ran her hand over the dress. The silk was soft to the touch. Despite 10 years, the dress was in perfect condition. It was clear how carefully her father had preserved it. Audrey went into the fitting room. She took off her old sweatpants and faded t-shirt, the clothes she had worn for 8 years. Audrey stared for a moment at the clothes discarded on the floor, then slowly took the dress. When the silk touched her skin, a shiver ran through her body. It fit perfectly, like a second skin. Audrey stood before the mirror, and stranger was reflected in it. No, not a stranger. It was herself, whom she had lost 8 years ago. Audrey slowly straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. Her back straightened, her gaze changed. The submissive daughter-in-law was gone. In her place stood a charismatic woman. The fitting room door opened, and Audrey appeared. All the staff froze, holding their breath. A gasp of admiration escaped someone. "You are magnificent, madam," Mr. Hayes said. His eyes were red. Audrey smiled slightly, but there was something cold in that smile. Finally, an employee brought a jewelry box. When it was opened, a diamond necklace was revealed. Dozens of carats glittered under the lamp's light. When Audrey put on the necklace, the look was complete. She looked in the mirror one last time and quietly said to her reflection, "Long time, no see." It was a greeting to herself, who had slept for 8 years. Madame A had finally returned. "Are you ready, madam?" Mr. Hayes asked. Audrey slowly turned her head. Her eyes gleamed coldly. "Don't call me madam. What should I call you?" The corners of Audrey's lips lifted slightly in an elegant but sharp smile. "Call me Madame A, from today, once again." Mr. Hayes bowed low. "As you wish, Madame A." Leaving the fitting room, Audrey looked out the window. Below, in the banquet hall, her husband's family, unaware of her appearance, reveled in their vanity. Audrey's gaze turned icy. It was time to show them what true luxury was. At the same time, the party at the Beaumont Emporium was reaching its climax. In the grand ballroom on the ground floor, hundreds of guests gathered. Corporate leaders, famous artists, political figures, the entire elite of American society. The clinking of champagne glasses echoed from all sides. The hall was filled with soft, classical music, and waiters in tuxedos glided silently between guests. Everything was elegant and dignified, but there were also those who disrupted this atmosphere. This was Audrey's husband's family. Brenda, upon entering the hall, gaped in amazement. "My God, what is all this? I've never seen such a huge chandelier." Her loud voice boomed through the hall. Those around her turned in surprise, but Brenda paid them no attention, continuing to exclaim loudly, "Tiffany, look, and that person over there. I saw him on TV." "Oh, you're right." Her sister-in-law, Tiffany, grabbed her mother's arm. "Mom, speak softly. It's embarrassing." "What's embarrassing? We were invited too." Brenda proudly straightened her shoulders and moved deeper into the hall. But her dress did not suit the place. A cheap knockoff, bought online for $300, which had been sold to her as a designer item for $10,000. The fabric looked cheap, the seams were uneven. Anyone with a slight understanding of fashion would immediately identify the fake. Her husband, Ethan, upon entering the hall, immediately began to look around. Greed was evident in his eyes. "I need to make connections here. That one, it seems, is the CEO of some corporation." Ethan tried to approach the stranger and offer a business card, but the man, sizing him up from head to toe with a disdainful look, turned away. He immediately understood that Ethan's suit was cheap. Ethan's face flushed crimson, but he tried to pretend that nothing had happened. His father-in-law, Richard, stood awkwardly in the corner. He was at such an event for the first time and didn't know how to behave. He bashfully fiddled with a glass of champagne, then took a sip and grimaced. "What is this slop? Even cheap soda tastes better." Laughter was heard nearby, but Richard didn't understand why people were laughing. Meanwhile, Brenda clung to the buffet table. The table groaned under the weight of delicacies: caviar, lobster, truffle pasta, prime Wagyu steaks. Brenda's eyes glittered greedily. And all this for free. How lucky. She took 2 plates and began to pile on food. Meat on one, seafood on the other, but even that seemed not enough. She opened her handbag slightly. "I should take some mini quiches with me. They'll be for breakfast." Looking around, Brenda began to scoop mini quiches and macarons into her handbag. The waiter watched this with astonishment, but she paid him no attention. Her sister-in-law, Tiffany, was also not far behind. She walked around the hall, incessantly taking selfies. Spotting a celebrity, she tried to discreetly approach and take a picture next to them. "Excuse me, can I get one photo?" She tried to take a selfie with a famous actor, but his publicist politely intervened. "I apologize, but photography without permission is not allowed." Tiffany's face turned red with shame and anger. "Oh, please, he thinks he's a star. We'll see how you sing when your popularity fades." She snapped and walked away. Whispers began to circulate. Who are these people anyway? How did they get here? At that moment, Brenda at the buffet table collided with another guest. Food splattered onto the woman's dress. "Ah!" she cried out. There was a sauce stain on her dress. The dress was clearly expensive, but Brenda's reaction was astonishing. Instead of apologizing, she started screaming, "Watch where you're going. Open your eyes." The woman was taken aback. "Excuse me, but you bumped into me." "What? You're arguing too? Do you know who I am?" Brenda raised her voice. People began to gather around. "Do you know how much this dress costs?" "It's the latest collection by Madame A," Brenda shouted, pointing to her dress. But hearing this, those around exchanged strange glances. Someone snorted, "That dress is by Madame A?" "Yeah, you can tell it's a knockoff from here." The whispers grew louder. Brenda's face turned crimson, but she didn't give up. "What knockoff? Do you know anything about fashion?" The scandal was escalating. At that very moment, a woman observed this scene from a second-floor balcony. It was Audrey. In a luxurious gown and mask, she stood. Leaning on the railing, a black lace mask concealed half her face, but her eyes behind it gleamed coldly. In her hand, she held a glass of red wine. She slowly swirled the glass, looking down. She saw her mother-in-law creating a scene, her sister-in-law embarrassing herself, her husband being ignored when he tried to hand out his business card. Audrey silently watched all of this. The corners of her lips lifted slightly. But it wasn't a smile. It was contempt. The people who for 8 years had treated her like a servant, who had stolen her money and locked her in. Now they were making a spectacle of themselves. Audrey brought the glass to her lips. The red wine slid down her throat. A sweet and at the same time bitter taste. Quite an amusing spectacle, Mr. Hayes, standing nearby, said quietly. Audrey didn't nod. She just looked down. To think these people treated you like that for 8 years. I'm furious. No need to be angry. Audrey's voice was calm. Today, they will lose everything. Audrey placed the glass on the railing and slowly turned. Her eyes behind the mask gleamed sharply. Mr. Hayes, when is the main event of the evening? In 30 minutes, the champagne tower lighting ceremony. Excellent. Audrey looked down again. Her mother-in-law was still creating a scene, behaving as if she were the main character of the evening. Audrey's lips curved into a smile again, this time deeper. The smile of a hunter tracking prey. Good show, she muttered. Time to take the stage. Audrey left the balcony and headed inside. Mr. Hayes quietly followed her. In the soft light, her dress shimmered like the night sky. Downstairs, the scandal still continued. Her husband's family had no idea that in 30 minutes, their fate would change forever. Audrey walked without stopping. The click of her heels echoed down the corridor. Click-clack, click-clack, like a bell announcing the start of a trial. In the center of the banquet hall stood a giant champagne glass tower, over 10 feet tall. Hundreds of crystal glasses were stacked in a pyramid shape, shimmering in the spotlight. This tower was specially created for the Beaumont Emporium's 50th anniversary. Each glass was handmade, and the total cost of the tower amounted to millions of dollars. The culmination of the evening was to be the lighting ceremony of this tower. The department store owner was to pour champagne into the top glass, and the golden liquid would cascade down, filling all the glasses. At that moment, the lighting was to change, and the entire tower would glow with golden light. Guests gathered around the tower, awaiting the ceremony, but the problem was Tiffany, her sister-in-law. Wandering through the hall, she saw something that made her eyes light up. Next to the tower stood a young man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face as if sculpted from marble, a true male model. He was indeed a male model, invited as a model for this evening. Tiffany's eyes turned into hearts. Adjusting her hair, she approached him. "Excuse me, are you a model? You're so handsome." The man turned around. He smiled politely, but his gaze held bewilderment. Yes, thank you. And I'm here tonight as a VIP guest. My family is very well known," Tiffany boasted loudly. The man was not impressed. "I see," he replied awkwardly, stepping back. But Tiffany wouldn't give up. "Can I have your phone number? Maybe we could have dinner sometime." "I'm sorry, but I'm working right now," he politely declined. But Tiffany only grew bolder. "Oh, come on. What's the big deal? Just give me your number." She grabbed his arm. The man flinched and recoiled. And at that moment, Tiffany's foot caught on the base of the champagne tower. Losing her balance, she swayed. "Ah!" she cried out, flailing her arms, and her hand struck the bottom tier of the tower. Several glasses wobbled, and then everything happened in slow motion. One glass hit another, then the next. A chain reaction began. "No!" someone shouted, but it was too late. With a deafening crash, the champagne tower collapsed. Hundreds of crystal glasses shattered onto the floor. The sound of breaking glass echoed throughout the hall. Clink, clink, clink. People covered their ears. Shards flew in all directions. Champagne spilled across the floor. Splashes landed on guests' clothes. Screams erupted from all sides. The hall instantly descended into chaos. Tiffany sat on the floor, pale as a sheet. Her lips trembled. She didn't even feel the pain from the cut on her hand, from which blood flowed. So great was the shock. What happened here? Brenda, her mother-in-law, rushed over. Seeing the collapsed tower, she gasped. "My little Tiffany, are you all right?" "Mom, what do I do now?" Tiffany's voice trembled. Everyone around was looking at her. Hall staff rushed to the scene. The manager, seeing the collapsed tower, turned pale. How did this happen? And then Brenda's gaze changed. Confusion gave way to a cunning glint. She quickly looked around and saw a young catering staff member standing nearby. He was a student, hired for part-time work. He stared at the ruins in a daze. Brenda's finger pointed at him like lightning. It was him. That waiter pushed it. The guy's face went white. What? I didn't do anything. Don't lie. I saw it myself. You pushed the tower. Brenda screamed, desperately trying to shift the blame to someone else to save her daughter. Tiffany immediately chimed in. Yes, he pushed it. I saw it. The guy's eyes filled with tears of injustice. I really didn't do anything. I was just standing nearby. Shut up. If it wasn't you, then why did the tower fall? Brenda approached him and raised her hand to slap him. The guy winced, bracing for the blow. And at that very moment, stop! A cold, clear voice echoed through the hall. Everyone turned around. On the second-floor staircase stood a woman. Her midnight blue dress shimmered in the light of the lamps. A black lace mask concealed her face, but her eyes behind it were cold as ice. Brenda's hand froze in midair. She looked at the woman on the staircase. An inexplicable fear seized her. "Who are you?" she asked. But her voice no longer held its former confidence. The woman didn't answer. She began to slowly descend the staircase. Click-clack. The click of her heels echoed in the hall. Step by step, as if a queen were walking. People parted before her, holding their breath. Everyone felt that this was no ordinary person. The woman stopped before the collapsed tower. She looked at the shards, then raised her eyes to Brenda. This young man is not to blame. Her voice was quiet, but distinct. What? Who are you to interfere? Brenda raised her voice, but not with as much confidence. The woman's gaze bore down on her. The woman took a step forward. Brenda involuntarily recoiled. I saw everything that happened in this hall. The tower was not overturned by him, but by your daughter. She was bothering the model, tripped, and fell. Tiffany's face flushed. Richard, her father-in-law, and her husband, Ethan, rushed in at the commotion. The whole family was present. Ethan stepped forward. Hey, who are you to tell us what to do? Do you know where you are? The woman slowly turned her head and looked at him. Ethan felt a chill from her gaze. Where am I? The corners of her lips lifted slightly. I am home. The hall buzzed. Home? What did that mean? The woman slowly raised her hand to her face and began to remove the black lace mask. As the mask slipped off, revealing her face, the jaws of her husband's entire family dropped in astonishment. They couldn't believe their eyes. The face beneath the mask was all too familiar to them. The black lace mask slowly slipped away, and under the spotlights, her face appeared. Brenda went deathly pale. Her eyes widened, and her mouth silently opened. Tiffany, standing nearby, froze in place, as if she had seen a ghost. No, daughter-in-law, Brenda stammered. She rubbed her eyes, but the vision did not disappear. The woman in the luxurious gown and diamond necklace. It was, without a doubt, her daughter-in-law. Audrey, the same daughter-in-law who had been making breakfast in old sweatpants just this morning, now stood before them like a queen. How did you get here? Brenda almost shrieked. Her legs trembled. Audrey didn't answer. She merely looked at her mother-in-law calmly, with an icy gaze. Her husband, Ethan, stepped forward. His face held the same astonishment. Audrey, what is this circus? I told you to stay home. His voice trembled with a mixture of surprise and anger, but Audrey didn't even bat an eye. Stay home? Her voice was quiet, but distinct, and it echoed throughout the hall. After you locked me out. Whispers rose again around them. Locked? Locked someone in? The noise grew. Ethan's face flushed crimson. That was so you wouldn't disgrace us with your appearance. Disgrace? Audrey took a step forward. Ethan involuntarily recoiled. Who is disgracing whom? Her gaze slowly swept over the entire family. Her mother-in-law's fake dress, her sister-in-law's cheap bag, her husband's inexpensive suit. Contempt flashed in her eyes. People who hide buffet food in their handbags, knock over a tower worth millions of dollars while harassing models, and then blame an innocent person. And they talk about disgrace. Every word Audrey spoke was like a dagger's thrust. Her relatives' faces contorted. Brenda clenched her teeth. "You wretch! How dare you speak to your mother-in-law like that?" she screamed. But Audrey no longer cowered in fear. Her gaze grew even colder. "Mother-in-law?" she scoffed. In that scoff were 8 years of resentment and anger. A woman who for 8 years used her daughter-in-law as a servant, forced her to work from morning till night, and constantly humiliated her, played the role of a mother-in-law. Audrey's voice resonated clearly through the hall. Everyone held their breath. "Perhaps I should tell everyone present how you treated me." Audrey looked around. Hundreds of guests watched in silence. Ethan hastily intervened. "Audrey, that's enough. Let's talk at home." He tried to grab her arm, but Audrey coldly pulled it away. "Don't touch me." Her gaze was icy. 8 years, she slowly continued. 8 years I woke up at 4 a.m. to prepare breakfast. I laundered and cleaned for 4 people. I single-handedly made winter preserves, mended clothes at night. Audrey's eyes welled up, but she did not cry. For every holiday, I alone cooked for dozens of people, but I myself never even got a decent portion. From morning till night, I worked, but never once heard a word of thanks. Only mockery. "Servant. Factory seamstress," Brenda shrieked. "Isn't that a daughter-in-law's duty?" "It's always been that way." "Duty," Audrey repeated. "Locking me in and stealing my money, is that also a duty?" The hall buzzed again. "Stealing?" All eyes turned to the family. Ethan turned pale, remembering the $30,000. "And I just borrowed it. I was going to return it." "Borrowed?" Audrey scoffed. "My savings, which I secretly accumulated for 8 years. Money I saved from change, hid penny by penny. To take it, leaving a note that's called borrowing?" Ethan was silent. Audrey looked at the family. Richard, the father-in-law, hung his head glumly. Brenda and Tiffany stood with crimson faces. Her husband was pale. "And the clothes you're wearing right now," Audrey pointed to Brenda's dress. "You bought it on my credit card, didn't you?" Brenda's eyes widened. "No, I bought it with my own money." "Yes, with the card you secretly took from my wallet. I knew everything. Your father-in-law's suit, your sister-in-law's bag, your husband's shoes, all bought with my money without my permission." "So what?" Tiffany shrieked. "Can't we spend a little money in the family? Are you such an important person?" Audrey slowly looked at her. "Am I an important person?" She pointed to her dress. "Do you recognize this dress?" Tiffany looked at Audrey's dress. Midnight blue silk, crystals. She had seen a similar design somewhere. Could it be Madame A? Tiffany's eyes widened. She was interested in fashion and had seen Madame A's work in magazines. "Correct?" Audrey nodded. "This dress was created by Madame A 10 years ago. The only one in the world. A Hollywood actress offered $1 million for it, but it was never sold. And what? How do you have it?" Tiffany asked with a trembling voice. "Because I created it." Audrey smiled. The hall gasped. Created it herself. "So, this woman is Madame A. I am Audrey Beaumont," she proudly declared, "the founder of the Lumiere brand. Madame A, and the sole heiress to the Beaumont Emporium." After these words, the hall fell silent. The relatives' faces turned white. Brenda clutched her heart and swayed. Richard collapsed to the floor. "Daughter of the owner," Ethan stammered. His legs gave out, and he barely stood. Audrey calmly nodded. "Yes, the same daughter-in-law you treated like a servant for 8 years is the daughter of the owner of this department store. And today, you will pay for everything." Horror was reflected on the faces of her former family. Under the bright lights of the banquet hall, their world began to crumble. A heavy silence hung in the hall. No one could believe what they had heard. This woman, the daughter of the owner of the Beaumont Emporium, Madame A, her husband's family stood with deathly pale faces. But Ethan was different, his face flushed with blood. Shame and humiliation gave way to fury. "What? Daughter of the owner?" he roared. "Don't make me laugh, you're lying." His voice boomed throughout the hall. But Audrey didn't even blink. "We lived together for 8 years. And I wouldn't know you were a magnate's daughter? He scoffed. When you got married, you didn't even bring a decent dowry. If you were the owner's daughter, you would have brought trunks full of valuables. Next to him, Brenda chimed in. Exactly. We sold all your junk ages ago. Audrey's gaze turned icy. Dowry. Do you know how much my family assets were worth? Those jewels, that furniture, that crockery, all together, they were worth enough to buy an entire floor in this department store. You simply didn't understand their value. Ethan's face contorted. Shut up, you're lying. How dare you look at your husband like that? He suddenly raised his hand to strike Audrey across the face. Guests gasped. Audrey didn't flinch. She didn't even blink, looking coldly at the approaching hand. But the blow never landed. Someone's hand intercepted Ethan's wrist in midair. Ethan turned around in shock. Behind him stood a gray-haired elderly gentleman. He was around 70, but his gaze was as sharp as a hawk's. How dare you lay a hand on my daughter? His voice was quiet, but it sounded like a clap of thunder. At these words, Ethan froze. Daughter, he stammered. Only now did he recognize this man. Charles Beaumont, the owner of the Beaumont Emporium, one of the wealthiest men in America. A man Ethan couldn't even dream of meeting. Mr. Beaumont. Ethan's voice trembled. Charles Beaumont forcefully threw his hand away. Ethan staggered. So, you're the one who tormented my daughter like a servant for 8 years? Charles Beaumont's eyes blazed with fire. No, we didn't mean that, Ethan stammered. Brenda rushed over, forcing a smile onto her pale face. Mr. Beaumont, it's a misunderstanding. We loved our daughter-in-law so much, didn't we, sweet Audrey? She looked imploringly at Audrey, but Audrey didn't even glance at her. Dad? She addressed Charles Beaumont. Her voice trembled slightly. It was the first time in 8 years she had called him that. Her father's gaze softened. He approached his daughter and hugged her tightly. Tears streamed from Audrey's eyes. Dad, forgive me, she whispered, regretting that she hadn't listened to him 8 years ago. No, you forgive me, he said, stroking her back. I knew you were having a hard time, but I couldn't reach out to help. I was a bad father. Watching this scene, many in the hall choked back tears, but for the husband's family, it was hell. Charles Beaumont released his daughter and turned. His gaze became icy again. Not only did you treat my daughter like a servant, you also locked her in and stole her money. His voice was low and menacing. Richard collapsed to his knees. Mr. Beaumont, we didn't know. Forgive us. He repeatedly hit his forehead on the floor. Brenda also fell to her knees. Yes, we didn't know she was from such a family. If we had known, would we have acted this way? But these words enraged Charles Beaumont even more. Didn't know? So, it's acceptable to act that way. If a person isn't from a noble family, you can treat them like livestock? He raised his hand. Security guards in black suits entered the hall and surrounded the family. For 8 years of tormenting my daughter, you will answer to the law, Charles Beaumont thundered. Unlawful confinement, theft, defamation. Get ready. Ethan crawled to him on his knees. Father-in-law? Mr. Beaumont. I was wrong. Forgive me. We'll treat her well. Don't call me father-in-law. From today, you are no longer my son-in-law. Charles Beaumont cut him off. Divorce. Prepare the papers immediately. Ethan collapsed to the floor. Next to him, Brenda screamed, No, not divorce. She ran to Audrey, clutching her dress. Audrey, darling, Mom was wrong. Just don't divorce him. But Audrey coldly pushed her away. Now you call me darling. Her voice was icy. In 8 years, you never once called me that. Only you and wretch. Audrey looked at them. Humiliated, crying, crushed. She should have felt satisfied, but for some reason, her heart felt empty. She sighed softly. Charles Beaumont put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. Let's go, Audrey. Dad will take care of everything. Dad, she said, there's one more thing. We need to reclaim everything these people bought with my money. The security guards surrounded the family. Audrey slowly approached them. All right, time for reckoning. Mr. Hayes handed her a folder of documents. This is an excerpt from my personal account statement for the past 8 years. Brenda, You spent a total of Ardarnwu. Everyone. Off. Theirs happen it was litted. In a common vud. If you could not. In the three-way. And rection. Affidavit. Accent. And concebited nose. 85 bang. A pieces. Right to the way. Ander for those. And have to sud. They're sponted right. And read it op to go way. Ac. Everyone. The braided it ask. Everyone. Action tented a. Tense comment. Are weighted 9. Lex other bringes terriative. Accident. After. 87. And to stand. It's time lying. 18s. Tenber 5. A. As a sixen to halven divide a bruth. Ativizations. It's an action tinus did activisid. If you canna did mac. And audit crosses. Actional tour. Action tinazix. It's 80. Important tature. It's 2 that axivise and reigning. It's a nox properis. Day. Exodus. And 1. It's market. Accident. It's not way. And averwan. It's definite. And bastus. Wreath. Eberest. It's not from the tan. Down. Adigend. Anyone? Ticuar explated of the seas. And one the tin no. If you did write a disprasion, and if you did the mascast, and did the snost with a 17 by, activated. HSR. And that is hind. In reverses. Action. And intelst. APSS pen. As buys. Action. Extension. Are lot of lay. Resend. 18. Actiona. In every one. Is the saying. It's section I work it. Expramps down. Intel he's wear away. To the day sting. It's tedded meloded. Actuaway. It's a longed provet. It's been telled at every one. Ephronus. Anton. And it 1. Andifies did 8. Actions the davenet. 8. Round. A. Anapha. And everyone 2. 2. 5 million from this guard. Which you secretly took from A. Her mother-in-law. Face turned white a scock. 2.5 million? Yes. Tiffany $800,000, Ethan $600,000, Richard $300,000. That's a total of $4.2 million. And all this without my permission. This is theft. What theft? We're family, Ethan protested. Family? Audrey scoffed. A family that locks you in and robs you. That's not a family. She pointed to Brenda's dress. This dress is $35,000. That necklace is $500,000. Everything bought with my money is my property. Take it off. What? Here? Brenda shrieked. Yes, these are my things. The security guards set up a screen. Here are clothes to change into. Audrey pointed to cheap tracksuits, burning with shame. The entire family changed into these shabby outfits, left barefoot. And now, the second bill. Audrey took another document. Payment for 8 years of domestic labor, cleaning, cooking, laundry. According to experts, that's $4.5 million, and compensation for emotional distress, $3 million. Total, $11.7 million. This is your debt to me. Richard silently slid to the floor. They didn't have a tenth of that sum. If you don't have the money, we will confiscate your property. Your house, cars, vacation property, everything will go to auction, Audrey said calmly. Brenda crawled to her, clinging to her legs. Darling, forgive me. Mom was wrong. But Audrey was unyielding. I'm not darling. I'm Madam A. The very Madam A you so admired. She turned. Mr. Hayes, call the police. File a report for unlawful confinement and theft, and a civil lawsuit. As you wish, Madam A. Ethan rushed over. Audrey, please forgive me. Think about the 8 years we spent together. Years? Audrey scoffed. Did you ever once thank me for dinner? Did you ever buy me medicine when I was sick? You weren't a husband to me. You were just a neighbor. No, worse. A neighbor, at least, doesn't lock you in and rob you. She turned and walked towards the exit with her father. Behind her, sobs and pleas were heard, but she didn't look back. At the exit, she paused for a moment and looked back at the pathetic, crushed family in cheap tracksuits. Her eyes welled up, but she did not cry. It's all over, she whispered. 8 years of hell are over. She left the hall, and the bright light stayed behind. A year passed. Audrey stood by the panoramic window in the CEO's office on the top floor of the Beaumont Emporium skyscraper. Before her stretched a view of the New York City skyline. Her appearance had completely transformed. A sharp business suit, a confident gaze. Not a trace of the submissive daughter-in-law remained. Now she was a young woman, CEO, heading one of the country's largest retail empires. The divorce went quickly. Ethan, facing an investigation, agreed to all terms. Audrey took not a penny of alimony, simply severed all ties. After the divorce, she joined her father's company. Her talent, evident even during her Madame days, helped her quickly achieve success. The department store's sales grew by 30%. 3 months ago, her father handed her the position of CEO. That evening, Audrey gave an interview for the evening news. "Miss Beaumont," the anchor asked, "you were the world-renowned designer Madame A. Then there was a 10-year hiatus. What did you do during that time?" Audrey thought for a moment. "I was a regular homemaker," she smiled. "And that time made me stronger. You have to be at the bottom to truly appreciate the top. What are your plans for the future?" "I want to show people what true luxury is. It's not a price tag. It's self-love and self-respect. I want our department store to become a place where people find not just things, but their own value." At the same time, in a cramped studio apartment in a forgotten corner of the city, a completely different scene unfolded. Brenda, in an old tracksuit, ate cold instant ramen and watched the news on an old television. And who is all this because of?" she sighed. "Because of whom?" "Because of you," Richard snapped. "If you had treated our daughter-in-law normally, we wouldn't be living like this now." In the corner sat a dejected Ethan. He had lost everything, and now couldn't even find the simplest job. Their property had been confiscated to cover the $11.7 million debt. Tiffany had simply fled, cutting off all contact. Suddenly, a familiar face appeared on the television screen, and now, a report with the CEO of the Beaumont Emporium, Audrey Beaumont. Brenda's fork froze in midair. A radiant, confident Audrey smiled from the screen. "True luxury is self-love," she said. Tears flowed from Brenda's eyes. Late remorse overwhelmed her. Ethan also watched the screen. The woman he had lived with for 8 years was now so far away, in a different world. "Idiot," he muttered, addressing either her or himself. At the same time, Audrey spoke on the phone with her father in her car. The interview went well. "Yes, Dad, everything's great. Good job. Let's have dinner together tomorrow." "Okay, Dad," she smiled. Hanging up, she looked at the New York City skyline, shining with lights. A year ago, she had looked at the sky from a small kitchen window. Now, the whole world was before her. She quietly closed her eyes. All the difficult memories were part of the journey that led her here. The car stopped at her home. Audrey got out and looked at the starry sky. The same sky as a year ago, when she left the banquet hall. But then, her heart was full of anger and pain. And now, peace and happiness. "Now my real life begins," she whispered. She opened the door of her house. The door closed behind her. It was a final farewell to the past. Tomorrow would be a new day, and she eagerly awaited it. The new morning of the Queen was finally dawning. If today's story has resonated even slightly in your heart, please visit us again. If you have a moment, write a few kind words of support for the heroine in the comments. Perhaps your kindness will help someone find the strength to get through tomorrow. I sincerely wish you happiness today and tomorrow. Thank you for being with us.